What's good, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Power Core Productions and Podcastings. I'm your host, Jerron Harrington, back to hit you another video. And today, we're going to be continuing our What If Deku Was a Power Ranger series. Heroes of the Morphing Grid. You guys have been waiting for this for a while now. We're going to continue the series as we get into Season 3 of the My Hero Academia story with What If Deku Was a Power Ranger, Heroes of the Morphing Grid Part 6. I do want to say thank you for all the support you guys have given this week with the changes and everything that has been rearranged for Power Core Productions and Podcastings. It really means a lot. Like I've said before, the official schedule for the channel going forward will be as follows. You'll get 2 stories on Monday, 2 stories on Tuesday, 2 stories on Thursday, and today you get 2 stories on Friday. That will be your morning series as well as the afternoon or evening series. That's usually a continuation, and that will be What If Naruto Was in High School DxD. Now on Wednesdays, that'll be a story exclusive. But I have been thinking about adding another series to the channel. This won't be a story series so much as it would be a discussion series. You know, anime topics, discussions, things of that nature, plot holes, things I want to call out. I don't know what I'll call the segment, but I know that it'll be on Wednesdays, and it'll just be like a brief talk or conversation where I give my thoughts and opinions on something. Won't be long, maybe like a 10-15 minute video. You know, I put it out there and you guys can talk about it in the comment section down below and really spark some dialogue. You know, I just want to try this out and see what you guys like. So essentially you'll get 2 videos on Wednesday as well, and that's the schedule Monday through Friday. I won't be posting on Saturday or Sunday simply because I want to take those days off as a chance for me to prepare and get ready for my weeks ahead. Also, like I've said before, I'm a huge football fan. I love college football. Go Buckeyes. Love NFL football. Go Pack Go. Looking forward to that this weekend as well. So those are the 2 days that I really just want to take off for myself. I can usually do work while I'm watching Monday Night Football or Thursday Night Football, but Sunday and Saturday, those are the days that I keep reserved for me, so that's how the scheduling will be going forward when it comes to that. But anyway, I want to thank everyone who has been supporting Power Core Productions and Podcastings. Channel is continuing to grow as we're creeping closer to 800 subs, as we're on the road to 1K and beyond. So as always, thank you guys. Cannot do it without you. You make the core grow, you make the channel grow, and it means a lot to me. So anyway, without further ado, we're not going to take too much more time. Let's get into today's video of What If Deku Was a Power Ranger? Heroes of the Morphing Grid, Part 6. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Lord Dragon would not be pleased at the recent outcome of events. For whatever reason, his sword Saba had been taken from him, most likely by whoever activated the White Tiger powers from the power coins that had been stolen 8 years ago. He also had other issues to deal with, such as finding the Zeo Crystal, as well as launching his next assault on Aquitar. Not knowing how long it would take, he would decide to enlist the aid of a rather familiar ally. He at once attacked the Earth from Dimension 2017, aiding that Earth's Rita Repulsa in destroying her Rangers. In return, he required her absolute loyalty, and she had been serving under him. Now it was time to put her service to good use, as he would send Rita with whatever forces she needed, and they were to find his sword Saba, and whoever this new team of Rangers were. With that, she would be given a Ranger locator and would be sent on her way. Meanwhile, Deku, along with the other Rangers in Class 1A, would be preparing for the upcoming summer training camp. After the events of Island, now having a new student added to the team, it made things certainly interesting. Mr. Aizawa now having all 7 Rangers, he now knew that their training would be of the utmost importance, as well as making sure the other members of Class 1A were up to speed. David Shield had taken to helping the Rangers in any way that he could, even building a new command center that would be stationed in the middle of the UA campus. It would be a special building that only the Rangers could enter, where they could have their meetings and any other discussions that needed to be held. Melissa would be taking time to get used to her newly found quirk, elasticity, making her entire body like that of rubber, being able to stretch and move all of her limbs at ease. It would take some getting used to and some mastery, but she seemed to pick up on things pretty fast, and whatever she lacked in quirk power, she more than made up for with her intellect. With that, Class 1A would be sent on their way to go to the summer training camp, along with Class 1B, who would also be attending. Mr. Aizawa would tell his students that they were looking to prepare them for the upcoming provisional license exam, to make sure that they would be up to snuff when it came to being heroes and seeing where they improved. Aizawa would also be looking for other potential candidates, as new recent developments had come, especially with his own morpher that allowed him the powers of Ninjor. Of course, he would be keeping this to himself, as now wasn't really the time to be looking to add more to the ranks, but instead to make sure that everyone could go beyond, to go plus ultra. They would stop over to a cliffside to catch their breaths and stretch while taking a break. While doing so, they would meet two of the four famed hero Wild Pussycats, that being Pixie Bop and Mandalay, along with the young boy who would be with them. As the students wondered why they had stopped over to a cliffside, the two heroes would point that the training camp was at the base of the mountain, and that it would take them about 3 hours to get there. However, before they could get back on the bus, they would be thrown off of the cliff by a large earthquake, landing into the forest and coming face to face with the mud creatures. Before the students could go any further, all the Rangers would get a message through their communicators, being told not to use their morphers, as this was a chance to see how they could use their quirks. While it proved to be difficult, the 7 Rangers had been through a lot during their time in combat, and as such, they were much more proficient with their quirks than even they gave themselves credit for. Deku with his green flame, Bakugo with his explosion, Todoroki with his fire and ice, Ida with his immense speed, Uraraka with her gravity quirk, Momo with her creation quirk, and even Melissa found her elastic quirk to be rather useful. The 7 working in coordination with one another as well as the other students, leading the charge as they plundered through the forest, battling all of the monstrous beasts that came at them. They would actually surprise the teachers, making it in rather record time, in little under 2 hours, as opposed to the 3 that it would have taken the teachers themselves. Mr. Aizawa noting that it must have been due to the Rangers of his class, knowing full well the true extent of their powers and what they had been through. Had they been able to use their morphers and actually morphed into their suits before going into battle, it probably would have took them even less time. As the students would be taking their time to rest after their long and treacherous journey, Deku would see a young boy and try to say hello to him. However, the young boy would simply punch Deku in the nuts, causing him to fall over, much to the chagrin of the others, although Bakugo got a good laugh out of it. Mandalay would apologize and explain that this was her cousin's child, who she were looking after now, the young boy looking very irritated, stating that he wanted nothing to do with wannabe heroes. With that, everyone would take time to unpack their bags from the bus, as well as getting a fresh, warm-cooked meal. Of course, this would be the only night that the adults would be cooking for them, so they would have to make the most of it, as the next day, their training would begin. Meanwhile, Shigaraki would be less than pleased. Their attempts to steal the quirk amplifier and kill All Might once and for all had been completely ruined by those damn brats, those 7 rainbow-colored looking freaks. Whoever they were, Rangers or something along those lines. He wanted to destroy them just as bad, but especially the green one. As he would be speaking with Kurogiri, a large flash of green light would appear, and a woman would make her way into their private base of operations. As Kurogiri, the Warp Gate villain, were preparing to send her away, she would stop him using her long metal staff, as there now would be a standstill. The woman would introduce herself as Rita Repulsa, remarking that she had used her tracker to find where the last Putty Patrolman had been located in this universe, remarking that its location came from there. Now being able to put a name to a body, Shigaraki would ask if she were responsible for sending that clay monster. She would remark that it did not come from her originally, at least not from that version of Rita, but she would remark that she were familiar with them, stating that she worked for someone who were rather powerful and also shared in a hatred for the Rangers. Now being able to put into terms properly, Shigaraki would ask who were these Power Rangers and where they come from. Rita, not being too perceptive, would not want to divulge all of her information, but would simply state that the Rangers were a group of wannabe teenage heroes who needed to be put in their place. She would ask Shigaraki what his intentions were, and he would state that the only thing he wanted to do was end this society of heroes and to kill the symbol of peace. Feeling as if they were kindred spirits, she would agree to lend her aid to Shigaraki, but she would need something in return. She needed to capture all 7 Rangers, and if he could help her do so, then she would aid in killing the #1 hero, All Might. Shigaraki would laugh, stating that something like that seemed rather impossible, but Rita would simply smile, stating that she's killed Rangers before, and that this All Might will be no different. From there, the students would continue their training at the training camp, trying their best to improve their quirks in any way that they could. From their time of using their morphers and being Rangers, each had felt there was another level to their quirks that they weren't quite reaching or tapping into. When it came to Shoto, he knew that he couldn't use fire and ice together, but still, there was that one time where he tried to, and a gas appeared. With that, Shoto would clasp both of his hands together, emitting both fire and ice at the same time. When he did, a large amount of steam would appear, bellowing in every direction. When he formed different hand signs with his hands, using both his fire and ice, a large torrent of gas would appear out of nowhere. He wondered if this were the evolution of his quirk, if the combination of fire and ice could create some sort of gaseous wind. It was still a work in progress, but a step in the right direction. Bakugo would focus on increasing the strength of his explosion quirk, sticking his arms in boiling water and increasing his sweat glands before unleashing larger and larger amounts of explosions. He could feel the difference between his explosions in Ranger form and in his human form, noting that in his Ranger form they seemed to be 10 times stronger, although that was easily explained for all of the Rangers, remarking that their bodies were a lot more stronger and durable thanks to the Ranger suits and the powers of the morphing grid. For Mr. Aizawa, his goal was to get the Rangers to be as strong as they could be in their civilian form. It had to feel like second nature in the event that they couldn't use their morphers. After all, they never knew when they may or may not have the power. Uraraka would improve in her tolerance for zero gravity, And Melissa would practice different forms of yoga, stretching her body as far as she could in many different areas to see just what her limits could be. When it came to her arms and legs, she seemed to have a good range of about 30 feet. Her torso could extend upwards to about 40 feet, and all in all, it was mainly just a matter of seeing what her limits could be, knowing that the farther she moved and stretched, the greater her aptitude for her quirk would be. Deku would be by himself on the mountain tops, being in a secluded area, allowing him to focus more on his flame technique. He would shoot out flames from both his feet and from his hands, trying to get a mastery over it and to see just how long he could keep the flame going. Among many of his quirk exercises, he would shoot out a continuous stream of flame, trying to see how long it could hold before eventually it would extinguish. This being the Rangers' morning routine, as they worked mainly on building up their quirks and building up their endurance. However, it would be during the afternoon when their training would take a much different turn. It would require them to have to go into a special van, as they would need to be driven far, far away from everyone else, as the area that they would need to practice would need to be rather large. Once arriving to a designated area, this seemed to be nothing but a barren wasteland. They would step out of the car and would be greeted by both David and Alpha. Alpha telling the Rangers that now they were going to get to work in training with their Zords. This was something that the Rangers didn't think they'd actually have a chance to do, as Zord training was something that had been held off for such a long time. Looking out upon the barren field, David explained that they had up to 30 miles worth of free land to use, so they were allowed to do whatever they wanted. Plus, this was far enough so that no one else would be harmed or hurt and no one else could see them. Alpha would take off the restrictions on all 7 morphers, allowing each one to summon their Zords. The Zords were stored in another dimension, ready to be used in combat, so it was really just a matter of waiting until it were time. With that, all 7 Rangers would morph, turning into the Power Rangers. And as such, they would do as instructed, each one summoning their Zords one by one. As a dimensional gap would begin to open over the area, 7 distinct lights would hover above them, and off into the distance, the Zords would begin to materialize, standing to be larger and taller than most buildings and even in Japan. They would prove to be towering and massive, each one lowering themselves to their ranger respectively, as they would cautiously walk inside. David and Alpha would be working on the communicators, helping the Rangers learn to pilot the Zords. They would all stand together, and they would practice moving forward and backwards and going side to side. They were told to simply take things slow and not to overdo it, although Bakugo would get a bit out of hand with the T-Rex Zord, moving a bit farther and more ahead than the others, and trying to challenge Deku to a fight who was in the Dragon Zord. It would all be surreal and a lot to take in, and some would have a hard time getting a hold of the buttons, as well as trying to figure out how to pilot this thing. Even for Uraraka, who was in the pterodactyl, flying high above everyone else, it would prove to be very difficult in the sense that she weren't really an experienced pilot. Although, for some reason, it seemed as though piloting the Zords came second nature to them. Alpha remarking that it was most likely the powers of the morphing grid, and that for whatever reason, even when the Rangers first morphed, it seemed as though they could use the Megazord with ease, almost as if the information had been downloaded into their minds. From there, this would be the continual schedule for the Rangers, having their quirk training in the morning and their Zord training in the afternoon and evenings. They seemed to be rather tired and more ragged compared to the others. Melissa would be more than thrilled to finally be a hero, as well as admiring all of the technology that she had surrounding her. She would take more than the eager attention when it came to studying the Zords, writing down everything that she could into her journals. So much so that she had to stockpile a box full of empty journals, as she had so much to write in, so many ideas that she wanted to explore later down the line. It was all so surreal, and so much more than she could ever dream of. After a few days, they would be told by the people who would be hosting them, the four heroes known as the Wild Wild Pussycats, that after dinner they would be taking part in a test of courage along with Class 1B. Of course, not all of the students of Class 1A would be attending, as some had remedial classes with Mr. Aizawa. However, after they were making dinner, Deku would try to give some to Kota, but Kota wouldn't want anything to do with him. Deku would ask Mandalay what happened to Kota and what made him not like Hiro so much. Mandalay would explain that his parents were known as the Water Hose Heroes, and that they had sadly been murdered by a villain 2 years ago. Deku remembering reading about the incident. She would remark that young Kota had been scarred by that, and that as a result, he no longer cared for heroes or villains. He hated the hero society and quirks as a whole. Deku, understanding this, would try to speak to Kota once more, finding him in his secret hiding spot. However, Kota would only yell at Deku, stating that being a hero was stupid and foolish, that if his parents had not been heroes then they would still be alive, that somehow being a hero or a villain just gave them license to kill one another. Even Deku couldn't argue with that fact. As much as he loved and idolized heroes, he wasn't foolish to the state that it had placed the world in, and he had even known that heroes as a whole were not accepted by all of society. But even still, it did produce a rather dark and vicious cycle. The heroes versus the villains, or at least that's how it had always been. While he wanted to try to empathize with Kota, there wasn't much that he could do. Instead, he would just simply leave him some dinner before leaving. He wished he could have spoken to All Might. He wished he could have known what was the right thing to say. What could he do for young Kota in this moment? With that, Deku would regather with everyone else as they would prepare for the test of courage, the students unaware of what was to come, as overlooking the camp on the mountainside, 7 figures lay wait, along with Rita Repulsa herself. Shigaraki wanted to send his own troops into battle, to aid her in whatever way that she needed. They were waiting for a few more to arrive, but soon they would launch their attack. They were going to show these heroes that they control peace, and that they could easily take it away whenever they wished. As the students would start the test of courage, a thick smoke would start to form within the forest area. Some of the students passing out before realizing that the poison was laced within the smoke, as the students tried to cover their breaths, and everyone were trying to figure out what were happening, wondering if it were just a natural occurrence or if they were under attack. As a chill went down the spines of everyone on that mountain, as 2 villains had emerged, one having Pixie Bop pinned to the ground. It had now become abundantly clear. The heroes were under attack once again, as now 2 dark forces had now merged together. Rita Repulsa and the League of Villains, the Vanguard. They had come to put an end to peace. This concludes What If Deku Was a Power Ranger? Heroes of the Morphing Grid, Part 6. As always, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that's Power Core Productions and Podcasting that's to come out now and in the future. Stay tuned for today's afternoon video of What If Naruto Was in High School DxD. Love and Chaos Season 3 Part 2. That'll wrap up the videos for the end of the week, and we'll be back next week on Monday to continue with all things Power Core Productions. But anyway, that's going to do it for the end of this video. I'm Javon Harrington with Power Core Productions and Podcastings, signing off, and I'll see you next time.